You know, like if you're being called upon to lie or to bury your head in the sand, well, where's that going to end? It's not going to stop. It isn't how it works as far as I can tell. So it has to be something like that. And I mean, I'm not saying these are easy decisions. I'm certainly not saying that I made the right decision. I hope that they'd have to cart my skeleton out of the University of Toronto. You know, I liked my job a lot. It was just fine. And, you know, it's been nothing but chaos and upheaval since then. I mean, I have been rewarded, but I haven't been rewarded with security, something like that. That's not the right word exactly.
Stability, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's high risk, high reward. Fine. Right. But I would have settled for much less reward and much less risk. So, and I was perfectly happy with that. Now, I'm not ungrateful for what I've accrued in the meantime, but it's not an improvement, that's for sure. And I wouldn't lecture people about, you know, their moral obligation, because you've pointed out the problem. It's the proximal cost and the distal reward, right? You know, you see a system degenerating and you're going to say something and the cost to you is going to be bloody high and the impact is going to be perhaps not even measurable. But then you run into the problem that Heather just described, which is, well, if 70% of you don't like what's going on and you don't say anything, then, you know, where is it going to end? And people have to make those moral decisions for themselves. The only thing that I know, perhaps, is that lying doesn't seem like a good idea. And being forced to, particularly, you know, this is where I took my stand. I'm not saying other things that other people want me to say. It's like, up yours. You go and live the consequences of your speech, and I'll live the consequences of mine. And I'm not going to live the consequences of your speech. And that's where my government went too far as I was concerned. It's like, no compelled speech. I don't give a damn what your rationale is. Because why should I trust your rationale when you're transgressing against something so sacred? Why would I possibly trust your rationale? There isn't anything more sacred than the word. I mean, unless you want to just dispense with our accrued morality in its entirety, the one thing we've more or less agreed on in the, you know, relatively Christian West, or perhaps the Judeo-Christian West, is that the word is sacred. Well, if you want to throw that out, be my guest, but you're not getting me to throw that out. So now, whether I'm right about that or not, well, probably, you know, right, Christ, there's lots of ways I'm not right, I can tell you that, but lying is not a good idea.
You say that lying is not a good idea. Do we need to redefine the meaning of courage? In particular, when we look at courage, what it used to mean in generations past, going to war, well, really, you look at a lot of the courageous people now, they tend to be whistleblowers. They tend to be people who stand out from the crowd and say that they don't agree. Do we need to redefine what it means to be courageous?
I think that's always been the case. I mean, if you look at the prophetic tradition in the Old Testament, that's just one story after another of society degenerating towards a tyrannical state and a prophetic voice emerging, you know, representative of God in some abstract sense, saying, be careful, you're deviating from the proper path, and if you don't think there are going to be consequences, you're just not paying enough attention. Well, you know, how do you distinguish a false prophet from a true prophet? I don't know, maybe the false prophet tells you what you want to hear.
I guess I would just add to that I think physical courage and mental courage are related, that there's a reason that we use one word for both, and that in the modern world, there's far less opportunity to manifest physical courage or to know what it would be like. And, you know, it's been much discussed, and I agree with the sense that, you know, the lack of war is both beautiful and in some ways demasculinizing for society, not having that as even a possibility on the horizon. And there's plenty of things that girls and women do as well that requires physical courage, but it tends to look different. And in our disembodied, behind screens, especially for the last, especially during COVID era, just, aphysical lives, without having any sense of what physical courage might be or what physical risk might be, of course, we're now also more confused about mental courage. And so, being told things like silence is violence and also speech is violence. So, the whole thing just falls apart very quickly.
Before we go to our break and the Q&A, Jordan, I just want to come back to you on this because I'm not satisfied with the conversation we've had so far. And that's maybe because there is no answer, but I just feel like I've had so many conversations with people where I've said exactly the same thing to them. Lying is bad. It has consequences. If we carry on down this path, we will go to a very bad place. And we're already in a very bad place. And the answer is, yeah, you're just exaggerating. It's just the pendulum swinging the other way. It will swing back. Everything will be fine. And even if it's not, well, at least I get to survive today. You go and die. I'll survive today. What does one say to something like that?
They might be right. You just can't tell, can you? I mean, let's say the pendulum does swing back. Well, maybe it swings back because people stopped it from swinging too far. But then the people who said it's going to swing back will say, well, we said it was going to swing back, and look, there it went. Well, that's why you can't, in some sense, make your moral determinations as a consequence even of the analysis of an outcome. I think that's partly why something like faith is necessary. So, do you have faith in truth? Well, prove to me that truth is the best path. Well, I can't. That's not provable, and for exactly the reasons that you just laid out. It's a decision you make at some point, and you weigh the evidence. You stake your life on, you're either incoherent and all over the place, which is its own catastrophe, or you stake your life on a certain set of principles. You do that. You have to do one of those two things. You're either incoherent or you're coherent. If you're coherent, you stake your existence on some axiomatic principles. They're basically axioms of faith. And you have to decide what those are. And then you live out the consequences of that. And that's each individual soul's journey. And I'm not even sure you can convince people in some sense. I mean, you can talk to people and you can tell them what you think and you can let them make up their own mind. It's one thing I learned as a therapist, and I watch therapists on TV all the time. They're always telling their clients what to do. I didn't tell my clients what to do. I didn't know what the hell they should do. I mean, they were different people than me. And I didn't want to take ownership of their victories or responsibility for their defeats. That's not a good thing. And so I was always trying to help them figure out what they should do. And insofar, I think as I've been successful in my lecturing capability, that's because I'm doing that for the people I'm talking to. I'm not saying you have to believe this. It's people wrestle with their own conscience. But if you're forced to violate your conscience, something's up. Either your conscience is malfunctioning, or the thing that's forcing you to violate it is becoming tyrannical. What are the other options?